Remember when Obi-Wan was cool? Remember when he did the thing with the sword? Remember when he did the thing with the Force? Remember? Yes, I do. I also remember when he got manhandled in the last episode, so if you wanted him to look like a competent Jedi, that time has passed. After that last episode, you'd think the show couldn't get worse, and technically it doesn't. It just gets more logical, which is actually kind of worse. So you know what? I amend my statement. It does get worse, just in the most mediocre way possible. So after getting punked by his former student, Obi gets taken to Jabeam to get healed. There's a montage of Obi and Vader in their baka tanks, and look, now they've got the same wounds. See, Vader was doing to Obi what Obi did to him, making Obi feel his pain literally, and maybe using the Force to make him have flashbacks. And there's even a shot that shows Obi's hand and then Vader's missing hand. The symbolism is brilliant. Except, the shots show the pair's right hands, but Obi didn't cut off Vader's right hand. Count Dooku did that. Obi cut off his left hand. So, it's a nice scene, but still, you could have asked Pablo Hidalgo or anyone who's seen the prequels which hand it was before you filmed the shot. Anyway, Obi wakes up before he's healed and asks Tala where's Leia, and then it jumps to a scene of Reva interrogating Leia. Leia says that she's a princess of Alderaan, and remember that, because it's going to be important later. Reva comes in and demands to know where the underground Jedi Railroad is, and tells Leia that Obi is dead. Then it goes back to Obi and Tala on Jabeam, with them talking to Discount Forrest Whitaker about rescuing Leia. And, you know what, excuse me, there seems to be a missing scene. Where's the scene where Obi chews Tala out for ditching Leia to come rescue him? He made Tala promise to get Leia home, and instead, Tala came back to rescue him, leaving Leia by herself to be found by the Empire. Now, a normal person would be pissed, but Obi seems very calm and totally not angry at the broad who left a 10-year-old being hunted by the Empire to fend for herself. No, instead Obi gets chewed out by Discount Forrest Whitaker for being at their super secret hideout after him getting his ass whooped by his former student, and for thinking that the dude doesn't know what the Empire is capable of. It turns out he does. See, his wife was a Jedi or Force sensitive or whatever, and the Inquisitors came and took her. This is the weirdest attempt at humbling someone I've seen in a while, and is completely pointless. Obi is already emotionally crippled. He blames himself for everything that's happened. What's the point of humbling him when he already thinks this is all his fault? On top of all of this, Tala claims that Leia knows everything about their super secret group. Really? How? When did she learn this? In the 20 minutes you spent with her in the safe house? She knows of that one safe house, which has now been discovered, and maybe that Haja helps the Jedi for a price. That's it. She doesn't know the names, locations, or routes that you take. She doesn't know who you've helped. She knows nothing. Unless you're claiming that 10-year-old Leia Organa is part of a growing rebellion. At 10. And obviously you wouldn't be suggesting that, because that would be stupid no matter how mature she acts. However, Discount Forrest Whitaker agrees to help after his little speech because plot. In comes Mouse from the Matrix and Discount Rose Tico. One of them will die. Whichever one will it be? Or really, the better question is, will you care since you never learned anything about them? Anyway, somehow they know that Leia is being held at Fortress Inquisitoris. That's from the show. That's what they call it. Now, how do they know Leia is there? Who knows? What they do know is that the fortress has no shields because no one would be stupid enough to attack it. For the love of... Look, the Empire is known for making really dumb decisions, like building obvious flaws into their killing machines, not once, but twice. But this is just retarded. Just say that the planet is so heavily defended that there's no point in shields because nothing would ever get through. That would make more sense than being so cocky that they don't use shields. Obi then decides to go rescue Leia, and Tala joins him. On the ship, Obi can barely pull a bolt to him with the Force, and Tala tells him that it takes time to heal. And she's not just talking about his recent fight, but his guilt over Vader's fall. Now, in my previous video, I mentioned how the miniseries recontextualizes why Obi sent Luke after Vader instead of Leia, and it looks like I called it. I said in my video that the difference is that he knows of Luke, but cares for Leia. And this is exactly what Tala says, and what Obi admits to. It's kind of ironic because that's how it was played in the expanded universe as well. The show writers probably aren't doing that on purpose, but it is kind of funny that they came to the same idea. Meanwhile, Reva keeps trying to get Leia to talk, and Leia pulls her mature face and says she doesn't know anything, and none of this makes any sense. Why are you interrogating this girl? What could she possibly know? After all, she wasn't involved until you had her kidnapped, and it's only been a few days. What safe houses would she know about? What routes? What people? She's in this situation because you put her there. She knows nothing. Just try to follow Reva's logic here. Leia has seen the safe house, so Reva assumes that the people running the safe house gave a 10-year-old a total breakdown of their network, and that this 10-year-old can keep it a secret because 10-year-olds are really good at keeping their mouths shut. What happened to the writers? They started off okay with the first 2 episodes, and the third was bad because of how Obi-Wan was treated, but this is a whole other level. Was this thing ghost-written by Riri Johnson? Are you trying to subvert expectations? Because if you are, don't. Anyway, Tala just lands at the fortress no problem. No clearance codes, no checks when she enters the system or the atmosphere. She just sits down and goes about her business power walking through the fortress. One dude stares at her but nothing comes of it. Instead, she gets checked when she's deep inside the fortress. A security guard demands her ID and she pulls rank to get in, which works, so that scene was pointless. It was meant to show that she's strong and assertive, but we've already seen that in the last episode. The weird part is that Tala is nervous about the whole thing. This is the same person who killed stormtroopers under her authority with an Imperial weapon and didn't think twice about it. She even let herself be seen going into a safe house in her uniform, although no one bothered to mention that in the last episode. Why wouldn't she just come into this fortress and pull rank right from the start? During all this, somehow Obi-Wan is underwater. There's not a shot of him diving into the water or getting off the ship, so how he gets there and why he's not being crushed by thousands of pounds of pressure while swimming at the bottom of this water world, who knows? That's not the dumbest thing that happens in this episode. Tala gets him in, he kills a stormtrooper, and then it goes back to Reva trying to use the Force to pull info out of Leia's mind. Leia resists, obviously, and yet Reva, a Force user, doesn't realize why. Let's set aside that, again, at 10 years old, Leia is able to do something her later 20-something brother couldn't do. Luke's emotions about him realizing Leia is his sister completely betrays him in his fight against Vader. But at 10 years old, after Leia learns that Obi is dead, she's able to totally resist a full-on Force attack from a trained Force wielder. 'Cause, whatever, that's really not the dumbest part either. The dumbest part is that Tala goes to this computer room to find where Leia is being held and whips out a comm to talk to Obi in front of everyone. And the dude next to her can hear every word she's saying. She's not even trying to hide that she's speaking into the thing. Did no one on the show think, gee, this looks stupid? She's obviously suspicious, so one of the guys asks to speak with her. Meanwhile, Obi is wandering around and almost gets spotted by a droid. He calls for Tala, but she's too busy killing the guy, and no one in the room notices that she's killed him or that Obi-Wan is calling her. As this happens, some stormtroopers appear, so Obi hides. But then Tala is back and calls Obi, who didn't turn off the mic while he's sneaking around, so they hear him. Why would you leave this on when you're hiding 3 feet from the troopers? Well, that's because now Obi gets to use the Force to distract them. He makes a sound in another room, and they go looking. Back with Reva and Leia, Reva tells Leia that the people who are helping her and Obi left Obi to die. All these scenes seem to imply that Reva may have had some contact with the rebels and they abandoned or refused to help her. For a show that's almost over, it doesn't make any sense to keep pussyfooting around Reva's backstory. After all, she's not the main character of the show. There's no reason not to make her motivations clear with just 2 episodes left. Leia pretends to go along with Reva's request, but asks to talk to her father first, which Reva somehow falls for. Who would be dumb enough to fall for that? She actually considers it for a second before realizing it's a ruse. How stupid can Reva be? More bizarre is that she orders for Leia to be tortured, but seems like she doesn't really want to do it. Is this how you're going to show that she's got some good in her to explain her likely turn to the good side? She's going to torture a child, but she really doesn't want to do it. You know that doesn't make her a good person, right? You actually have to show her being good to show that there's some good in her, not have her send Leia away and then make a frowny face. Anyway, Obi finds a hallway full of Jedi bodies. Turns out that the Inquisitors collect the bodies of Jedi they capture and store them. It's not clear if they're dead or just in stasis, but the victims go back at least 10 years, all the way back to when Vader destroyed the Jedi Temple, cause there's a little Padawan. As he's walking through the tomb, Obi hears Leia call for help from the torture chamber and asks Tala to create a distraction. Back in the chamber, Reva goes through the whole process of locking Leia down but keeps stalling. When it looks like she's got no choice but to go ahead with the torture, she gets interrupted by Tala's distraction. She goes to meet Tala, who tries to convince Reva that Obi is on another planet. But Reva sees through the lies, which is interesting since 2 minutes ago she was dumb enough to fall for Leia's "I'll do what you want if I can call my dad first" ruse. Just top-tier writing. Reva calls Tala a spy, and Tala admits it, claiming to be a double agent. Reva again can tell that she's lying, but not whether it's to her or for her. If only there were a way that Reva could, I don't know, peer into Tala's mind to find out the truth. If only. Instead, Reva orders for Tala to be interrogated the regular way. Back in the torture chamber, Obi-Wan takes out the lights and goes full-on Ninja Gaiden on the stormtroopers. On the way out, he and Leia get spotted by a droid, setting off the alarm and blowing Tala's bullshit story. Reva leaves to go fight Obi-Wan, while troopers come to take Tala away, and she manages to kill them by pulling on one of their helmets, stealing the other one's gun, and shooting them both. Why not? Why not? Oh, but that's not the part. The part is when Obi-Wan gets his groove back. Just a few hours ago, he was too scared to even use his lightsaber, and too rusty to be able to fight back against Vader. Or maybe he was still traumatized from finding out about Vader, a thing apparently everyone but him seems to know. But now he's kicking ass and taking names. He's blocking laser bolts. He's killing droids. He's killing troopers. He's pulling off trick shots to take out door controls. He's using the Force to stop glass from breaking. The same guy who just a few minutes ago couldn't move a fucking bolt 2 inches across a table can now hold off thousands of pounds of pressure on a window with the Force. And of course, he manages to hold it just enough until the troopers get through, and then he runs for cover and the troopers die, and Tala mentions the shielded doors won't hold and they're even leaking. But of course, the show never comes back to that. Tala wraps Obi in someone's long coat with Leia hiding under it, and they just walk right out the fortress. Up the elevators, past the security checkpoints, right onto the hangar. They even pass the other Inquisitors who've arrived, who don't notice or sense Obi-Wan at all, even when he's literally right next to them. No, it's Reva, who somehow manages to come out of the same area the Inquisitors went into without bumping into either of them, who spots Tala, Obi, and Leia. The trio are trapped until the rebels, 2 of them, show up, and because there are no shields or weapons defending the hangar, they just take everyone out. Now, look, no one is saying the writers need to be master tacticians, but come on, no guns, no weapons of any sort tucked away anywhere on this fortress. None. Just the stormtroopers with their shitty aim. Did no one working on the show ask why a fortress has no defenses? No one. No one. Anyway, Discount Roast Tico and Dead Man Flying show up in snow speeders, and they just take out everybody. Somehow Obi, Tala, and Leia are able to fit in the backseat of a snow speeder, and then they fly off. Meanwhile, Dead Man Flying holds off Reva, buying the others time, and then when he goes to fly off, Reva chucks some power cells at him and he blows up. It's a very sad and tragic moment, or it would be if we had gotten to know the character, but since we didn't, who cares? Back at the fortress, Vader shows up and force chokes the shit out of Reva, and credit where credit due, they didn't fake the shot. They have Moses Ingram on wires and it's all in camera. Hayden Christensen is obviously enjoying himself playing Vader. Vader is going to kill Reva for failing him until she reveals that she let Obi escape on purpose. See, Reva put a tracker on Leia's droid, and now they'll be able to follow Obi wherever he goes, until he leaves Leia because the tracker's in her droid. And it's a mystery where they might go, because wherever would Obi-Wan Kenobi take Leia Organa, Princess of Alderaan? Where in the galaxy would they go? Obi's on a mission to save Leia Organa, Princess of Alderaan. Where would he take the Princess of Alderaan after he saved her? Could it possibly be back to the palace on Alderaan? You know, the place where you kidnapped her? Where else would he fucking take her? Why do you need a tracking device? You know exactly where the fuck he's going. Obviously, he's going to take her home. It's so obvious that you could have just let him take her home in the first fucking place and just waited for him on Alderaan. This is the dumbest plan ever. Ever. Just all kinds of stupid. Now, sure, It's more likely than not that the writers were intending this to mean that they're tracking Obi to the rebel base so they can find the underground Jedi Railroad. But the way it comes across is that they don't know where Obi's going to go, which is just moronic. Almost as moronic as the rebels being paranoid about being discovered by the Empire, not having anything on their ship that could detect a tracking device. Mercifully, that's the end of the episode. Oh sure, Discount Rose Tico mopes around about her dead boyfriend, and Leia holds Obi's hand because now they're almost like father and daughter. But that's not important. What's important is that we're almost through the show, and we're basically still where we started. We know nothing about Reva or why she has a hate boner for Obi. The fight between Vader and Obi was pointless because it didn't change anything between them. Other than the Grand Inquisitor being dead, maybe because he might still be alive, nothing of substance has actually happened. The whole point of the series is to add something to this period of Obi-Wan's exile. It needs to be something meaningful, something that adds to the lore, not something so pointless that if you didn't watch it, it wouldn't matter. That Kenobi fan film that came out a few years ago had more substance in all 4 of these episodes. What's the point of this series? It seems like it's really about Reva and Leia, and if that's the case, just make those shows. You're wasting Ewan McGregor, and that should be a felony. Give him something to do. After all, he is the lead of the show. There's got to be a point to telling this story other than nostalgia bait. You've got to have something more than this, but then again, it is Disney Star Wars, so substance is the last thing they're worried about. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.